Bill Alcoholic. Oh. Texas. I'm in Texas. So Charlie picks us up in his Humvee. We went out shotgun shooting today and ate barbecue. I think I'm a redneck. My wife had that shotgun in her hand. She was aiming that thing. I got excited. I think I've lost all my liberal street cred from Southern California. Man. First time in Austin. You got a beautiful city here. And what's true? You know, you do this enough, you go around, you talk a lot, you tell your story, you get tired of hearing your story, so you start making stuff up. It's really not lying. You're just kind of keeping your own interest, you know? Most of us don't have good stories. Most of us, it's just like pathetic, sober, you know? You know, I mean, some of us, thank God, some of us were like wheelmen for the mob and fighter pilots and stuff, you know, but I suspect those guys anyway, you know. And I suppose the one thing that's kind of interesting about my story that's different than a lot of people is that when I was 6 years old, an odd thing happened. My dad got sober. He got fired from a job, and rather than go to the bar, he came home. And I'm pretty sure it was my mother called AA. And he went to a meeting in Hawthorne, California, and at a clubhouse there that's still there. It's not in the same spot, but the clubhouse itself still exists. And he came back from that meeting and he said to my mother, he said, "Those people have got something down there, and I'm going to go back and find out what it is." So the next night, she went with him in order to monitor the experience. So they walked into this clubhouse the next night, and this woman ran up to my mother because she looked really out of place, and said, "You know, what brings you here?" And she goes, "Well, I'm here to make sure that he fills out the form and talks to the counselor and pays the dues." And this woman took my mother into the other room. Don't make Al-Anon jokes if you don't know what it is. A lot of people make a lot of stupid Al-Anon jokes because they don't know what it is. But if you know what it is, you can make some great Al-Anon jokes. Yeah. Stop and think of the consciousness of an individual that would live with us on purpose. It's like, you know, it's amazing. When my father died in 1999, he was 45 years sober. And my mother passed away in 2002. She was 48 years in Al-Anon. So I grew up in AA on top of all my other problems. Well, there's nothing worse than living in a house with two people with clear eyes that know exactly what's going on in your head. It's just not fair, you know. Now, there's a lot of talk around AA that we have lost our edge, that the message has been diluted, that we used to have a 75% success rate and now it's less than 5%. or however they twist the statistics that they don't understand to match their opinion. And I think that we're alive and well and as effective and as vibrant as we've ever been. You know, I get to travel around in it a lot. I've been over a good part of the world doing AA stuff. And from everything I can tell, we're growing. If you know and try to understand how they compile the statistics, one thing becomes very clear. They have no idea how many meetings of AA there are, much less how many people there are in AA. They don't have a clue. For sure, it's less than what they think, or what they come up with is a lower number than what actually is. They say there's some 2 million of us, you know. There's probably 3, 4, 5 million people in AA, I would suspect. There's probably 300,000 or 400,000 meetings, you know, all over the world. There's over 300 12-step programs now, you know that? When they came up with Codependence Anonymous, they came up with a program that every living human being qualifies for, you know? I mean, everybody can work the steps. Most of them can drink while they do it, which is really unfair, you know? I mean, the drug addicts have been destroying Alcoholics Anonymous since 1935. Any minute we're going to collapse under the sheer pressure of the crackheads, you know? And you can tell who they are. They're all in the back of the room back there. They're just a little bit sleazier than the rest of us, you know? Hiding out in AA, you know? And now the young people are coming. Have you noticed? The children are coming now. Have you noticed that? And the little bastards refuse to leave. You know? And they're staying sober. It's ridiculous. My home group is the Hermosa Beach Men's Stag. It's where the men are men and the sheep are nervous. We're sober correctly there, unlike some of you. You know? I mean, you walk in there and you start sharing about your girlfriend, we'll just clap till you stop. You know? We don't care about how your day went. It's about recovery, damn it. You know, it's one of those kind of meetings. And about 10 years ago, the kids started coming. They started filtering into the meeting, and a bunch of the old bastards left because, well, then we're not a daycare center. You know, like there's this illusion like the kids are coming to AA because it's so hip. My friend Scott Redmond said, Alcoholics Anonymous has offered me a level of lameness that I didn't know was available. You know? I think they need help. I think that's why they're here. I think so. Well, the kids started showing up, and a few years ago, this kid's 15 years old. He's taken a cake for 1 year. You got to stand down at the end of the room. The rest of us are sitting down in kind of big circles, and you got to stand at one end of the room, and it can be very intimidating because we are judging you. We're not shy about that at all. And and he's standing there and he's taking his cake, and he gave the most right-wing AA pitch I think I've ever heard. And at the end, he was pointing and yelling, if you're sitting out there and you don't have a sponsor and you're not working the steps, may God have mercy on your soul. I went up and asked him to be my sponsor. I think we're growing. I think what Bill Wilson wanted, he wanted hospitals across the country. Remember, he went to Rockefeller and tried to get the money. Thank God Rockefeller didn't give him the money. Who knew better about what money can do for corruption than John Rockefeller? You know? And I mean, I'm sure that if Rockefeller had given Bill and the boys 2 or 3 million bucks, we'd be meeting somewhere else tonight, you know. Yeah. I mean, these are the guys, they wrote the book. When they wrote the book, the first thing they said, one of the first things they say in the book is the first 100 of us. There were only 77. He rounded up by a third. You know? Yeah. Now there's hospitals across the country. Now recovery is part of our lexicon. It's part of the language. You hear about recovery as much as you hear about addiction, alcoholism. You know, there's places to go. There's pathways, doorways into AA or whatever your problem might be that didn't exist before. You look at those 300 spin-offs from AA, you've got to, if you're looking at the growth or decline of AA, you've got to count that. That all came from us. It all came from us. That's how we handle singleness of purpose. If you have a specific problem other than alcohol, use the steps, use the tradition, use the books. Here you go. You can take it. We'll help you. We'll help you. You know, look at recovery around the world. A few years ago, there was a convention, an NA convention in Tehran, Iran. Now, you can't have AA there because it's a Muslim state and there's no alcohol. Therefore, there's no alcoholism. Right? But you can have NA because evidently drugs are illegal, but they're not immoral, you know? So you can have NA. So they had this convention in Tehran. 12,000 people showed up. The only convention in the U.S. that's bigger than that is Founders Day in the U.S. 12,000 people. Now, do you suppose there's some alcoholics hiding out in the NA meetings? Any minute, they're going to collapse under the sheer weight of the alcoholics hiding out. I got sober in March of 1985. I was 37 years old, and I walked in here. And, you know, all of us kind of tell the story about how when we got here, we really didn't want to be here. And those of us that have been sober for a while, you know, you will many times say, I never planned on staying this long. And I've said that before, but you know, the truth of it is, if I think back on it, I was really hoping that this would work. I was pooped. And I was really hoping that this would work. I was really hoping that I could spend the rest of my life here with you. And so far, so good. Now, I'm 28 years sober. I have liver disease. I'm on a liver transplant list. It's shocking, isn't it? I'm in AA. I have a bad liver. I wonder how that happened. And, you know, sometimes I get down. Sometimes I get depressed. And sometimes, you know, I whine. Sometimes I have self-pity. And, but the truth about it is I've been given 28 years free. I mean, the truth is if I hadn't have stopped drinking, I'd be dead for sure. You know, I had hep C and cirrhosis, and, you know, I've been battling it for a long time. But I have not wasted this last 28 years. You know, I've done a lot of stuff. I've lived my life. You know, I'm married to a woman who's the love of my life. You know, and my relationships are much deeper, more profound. You know, I've grown up in Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's been a really good life. It's been a good life. And I really hope it continues. You know, I'm not done yet, you know. But what a blessing. I mean, sometimes don't we forget, you know, don't we forget what has happened to us? We've been awakened. What an incredible experience. Everybody in the world wants to get awakened. You know, they all want to be born again. Well, here it is. This is what it looks like. It's us. We literally have been born again. We've been given another chance. I was sitting with a pretty big-time Indian guru some years ago, And he had just given a talk, and a friend of mine was connected to him, so there were like a couple of us sitting with him in this back room after he spoke. And I'm talking away, and he's looking at me, and he starts laughing. And I said, "What are you laughing at?" He says, "I just love you alcoholics and drug addicts." And I said, "Why is that?" And he goes, "Well, the rest of them out there are trying to get awakened. You're just trying to figure out what the hell happened." Isn't that true for us? Like, what the hell happened? You know? Sober? What do you mean sober? You know? Who would have ever suspected that we would live a life drug and alcohol free and like it? And like it. Those are just my opinions, but they're really good ones. At 17, I was a bad drunk in high school. At 17, I had the big jacket and the slouch and the sneer and the foul mouth and the greasy Levi's and a bad attitude. If you had any authority at all, it just pissed me off. And I carried a gun. And I was a redneck back then, It's like, and I lived in Southern California in a place called Palos Verdes. There's no good reason to carry a gun in a place like that, And I don't know where the hell that came from. I wasn't raised by people like that. Nobody beat me. Nobody tortured me. But all of us tell the same story, don't we? The story is always the same. Now, the events of the Drunkalog can be different because we come from different cultures and different countries and different places. We're raised by different people in different circumstances. But all of us talk about how long before we drank, we didn't feel part of, we didn't feel connected, we felt separate from. The aliens had dropped us off and we're waiting for the mothership to return. We have cute ways of describing it. And we lost ourselves in books or food, or there was some other kind of addictive process going on long ago. We talk about having the ism long before we ever drank. Sometimes when we talk about that, we use this term called alcoholic thinking, as if there is such a thing, The only place you ever hear the term alcoholic thinking is in Alcoholics Anonymous. No one else uses that term. You know what the professional community say about us? They say that we are emotionally immature. And we hear that and we go, no. I have special thinking. I have alcoholic thinking, and it's never going away. And you need to consider that when you're dealing with me. I have special thinking. And I'm convinced we're just emotionally immature. I mean, we talk about this feeling of separation like it's some kind of unique feeling. How many people here have raised teenagers? They're aliens. Can't you see it in them? They're 8, 9, 7, something like that. You're their favorite toy, and somewhere around 11, 12, 13, they look at you and you are the stupidest creature they've ever seen in their lives. And you'll never, ever understand. The difference between us and the other kids that feel that sense of separation is that we medicated it and we never grew out of it. And now we show up here in AA and we're going to grow up now, and the chances of us doing that and looking good is really slim, But at 17, you couldn't talk to me about any of that. And that's why these young men and women that are coming into Alcoholics Anonymous, I'll tell you something true. This is the truth. I was a little bit put off by it. I didn't know what to do with them. Like I felt like I had to adjust myself to be different, to try to reach out and help them, which proves not to be the case. All I have to do is be compassionate. All I have to do is listen. And when you're sitting across the kitchen table from them and you're reading the book with them, the age difference goes away. Literally, it goes away. And I sponsor a bunch of young men now that are 24, 25, 26 years old, and they're 7, 8, 9, 10 years sober. And they're doing everything I'm doing. They are Alcoholics Anonymous. They're coming right behind. They're right behind us, carrying the torch, doing all the stuff that we're doing, sponsoring people. And some of them are starting to speak around a little bit. And they're doing H&I panels, and they're helping each other. They're helping each other. And you watch their lives just explode. They just explode. But at 17, I wasn't hearing any of that. By the time I was 22 years old, I was in the Oregon State Mental Institution. I needed a rest. It was the 60s. It's rough changing the world, It's a tough job, 24 hours a day, man. You got to really work at it. And, I saw on 4th of July, 1965, I was at Bass Lake, California, when the Hells Angels rode into that valley, and I found my career path. I wanted to be a gunslinger and a tough guy. My story is I was a surfer and a biker and a tough guy. And I never went to the beach. My motorcycle rarely ran, and I was afraid to fight. But I looked really good, man. I had a chrome Nazi helmet for a hat and a primary chain for a belt and black greasy Levi's and big black boots with chains around them. I've got tattoos all over me, but I had a clip-on earring because I didn't want to hurt myself, My biker nickname was Horny. I have it tattooed on my arm right here, and it's misspelled. It's Horney. It's Horny. I mean, that's all you really need to know about me, isn't it? It's, I met her that weekend, and she lived up in Oregon, and I drove her up there, and we ended up getting married and had a couple of kids. And by the time I was 22, I'm running with an outlaw motorcycle gang, and I'm sticking needles in my arm every day and drinking like a fish. And I'm not coming home to that family, and they're on welfare, and we lost a house and a couple of cars, and we lost ourselves. I destroyed that family, and I ended up in a mental institution. Barbed wire on the top of the fence, mental institution. This was the mental institution. The ward I was on was the ward Ken Kesey worked on when he wrote Cuckoo's Nest. They filmed that movie on the ward that I was in. I'm not bragging. But some people went to college, and that's all I got. That's it, And anybody else here been in a mental institution? I was a professional too. Well, there's a bunch of you out there, there wasn't enough hands. There's a bunch of you out there going, well, it really wasn't an institution. They were just observing me, I work alone. Well, that's nice. Those of us that have been in a mental institution know that it's not that bad, really. You have sparkling conversations there, It's a great place to look for a bride. And, so the state of Oregon thought that maybe I should leave. I agreed. And I came back down to Los Angeles and tried to clean up my act. And my father, my sober father, gave me a job in his machine shop and let me sleep in his garage. And the reason that I know that I'm an alcoholic is because I was able to put down everything else. You know, you can't, if you're going to clean up your act, you got to stop shooting heroin because you can't get anybody to go along with the concept of social heroin use. There's just no support for the position, you know. So I just quit. And you can't take LSD because normal people have two-way communication with each other. And with acid, you don't really need the other person. You just kind of party by yourself, you know. And so I quit doing that. And I quit all this stuff. And I did the drinking on weekends and smoking pot during the week because pot really isn't drugs. It's green and it's from God and it's, you know, biodegradable and it's what you do in between getting high. It's just maintenance. Because I don't know about you, but the impact of your personality on me is devastating. I cannot do you. I need something in my system at all times to cushion the blow of you on me. And for about 22 or 23 years, there was something in me all the time. And I met another woman because you can't ever be alone. You know, it's a group effort getting me through life. It takes a village, you know, and I mean, some things don't change, you know. I mean, I'm just a high maintenance dude. And I met her and we set up housekeeping and we tried to make a life for ourselves. And 15 years after the mental institution, I'm living in a house with this second wife and 2 new small children. And I had no emotional connection to another living human being. And I didn't know that. I didn't know it was that bad. I can't stand outside myself and have a separate experience and compare it to the one that I'm having to determine that there's anything wrong. The alcoholic life seems like the only normal one to me because it's the only one I've ever known. How would I know that I'm not connected when I've never been connected? It isn't like I had a life and then I lost it and I'm trying to regain it. I never grew up. I never had a life. I was never connected to anybody at any kind of an intimate level. So I had no idea it was that bad. It was just one more drunk. One more drunk. I was very sick. I was grossly overweight. I weighed well over 300 pounds. And I had a pinched nerve in my right shoulder because the muscles in my upper body had atrophied. My right arm was curled up against my side. I got in a political discussion in a second-story bar, which was a mistake. And they threw me out, and I shattered my ankles, so I had to walk with a pronounced limp. And I was a mess. And I think, I don't know this for sure, I could just feel death coming up behind me. And one more time, I was up when the sun came up. I was in the wrong place, and it was going to be another miserable day. You don't need any other proof that alcoholism is physiological other than that last 3 to 5 years that you and I spent out there. No one would consciously do that to themselves if they had any choice in the matter at all, because there's no party. There's no party going on. I'm just surviving the day. It's just maintenance drinking. I'm just trying to get through the day. You know, you ever drank yourself clear? Boy, that was never the idea, was it? You know, I mean, we tell people it stopped working. They think we're kind of joking. Well, it literally does. Man, I'm drinking and you're not going away. You know, because you're still there. I don't know what it looks like from the outside looking back at me, but I can still see your mouth moving and you're present in the room because I'm drinking for the blackout. I want out of here. I don't like it. This is your reality. It's not mine. And I'm not leaving. There's no more mental and emotional relief. But it would get rid of the physical pain every time, so I just kept drinking. On this particular morning, Evidently, so far, it was the end. So like any good gangster, I called my mom. Next time a big badass guy walk in here, ask him, do you live with your mom? Chances are, she's the only one left. And this is a woman that had been in Al-Anon for 30 years by this time. Al-Anons are prepared. They're ready. And they're efficient. And she showed up within a half an hour, because when we make that call, if we lay down and take a nap, everything changes. We wouldn't want to rush into anything, you know. And she got me and she checked me into a place out in Costa Mesa called Starting Point. And I spent 35 days in there. And I went to my first shrink when I was 13 years old because I had rage. Not anger, rage. I suffer from rage. Not so much anymore. It can still rear its ugly heads from time to time, but back then I had this horrible rage. I spent 2 tours of duty in the mental institution because I went back for a follow-up. I kind of liked it there, actually. It was an interesting place. I spent 2.5 years in group therapy at one time. I've been to several other therapists and shrinks. I've been gestalted and rolfed and primal screamed. I know more about myself than is safe to know. But it is my favorite subject. You know? While I was in this hospital program, they made me wear a sign around my neck. I had to make the sign. We made it in crafts. It's a little rectangular piece of cardboard with a string that went through it, and it said, "I am not a counselor." Because evidently there was some confusion about that. Then they let me out. They just let us out, don't they? Like we're okay. Go forth, multiply. And where do we end up? Here. This is it, man. This is the world's aftercare program. Alcoholics Anonymous. The inmates are running the asylum. We are the counselors. Now stop and think about this. I've been in a mental institution twice, and I've been married 3 times, and people ask me for relationship advice. I give it to them. I figure, hell, you can't hurt them. They're in AA, you know? Plus, stop and think about this. Whatever advice I give them could not possibly be worse than what they're planning on doing anyway. It's like free, you know? So now I'm a newcomer in AA. What up? You know, it's like, God, you hear a lot of stuff, don't you? I mean, there's just a lot of stuff flying around here. A lot of people think they're the light in the way, you know? There's a lot of different ways you can do AA. You can come to AA and not even do it. You know, that's common, you know? You can just go to meetings and hang out, have a good time. It's a fun crowd. 2 things happened to me that I think is just lucky, just pure luck. One is when I showed up, I just liked it. That doesn't happen to everybody. Not everybody likes it. You know, some people think it's just awful, like it's a sentence. Some people think it's boring. It's not possible to be bored in Alcoholics Anonymous. Matter of fact, if you're sitting out there tonight and you're bored, it really is because you are boring. You know? because this is better than any reality television show they'll ever come up with. This is better than Duck Dynasty or Swamp People combined. It's just the most bizarre place on earth, you know? And I have always been attracted to weird. I just think, and it's weird. And I've been here 28 years. I have never been bored. I've been pissed off. You've treated me poorly many times and continue to do so. But I have never, ever been bored in AA. Second thing happened to me is I asked a guy to help me, and he actually did, which isn't always the case. You know, some people, you walk up to them and you ask them for help, and they say, yeah, read the book. If you run into a problem, give me a call. This guy said, read the doctor's opinion, make notes in the margin of what you agree with and what you don't. Be at my house Thursday at 5 o'clock and we'll discuss it. So I did my homework assignment. I showed up to his house, and he did not trust me that I'd read it, and he had me sit there and read it to him out loud. And we would get to a place where I had made some notes, and I would, because, you know, I was defeated and hurt, but I was still opinionated, and there was some stuff I just didn't agree with, you know. It was obviously incorrect or just plain stupid. And we would talk about those things. And he said things to me that have stuck with me this whole time. I've had the same sponsor, 28 years. I should change, but he needs me now, you know. And so I try to help as best I can. He said, my job as your sponsor is to guide you through the process of the 12 steps that you might have some kind of a spiritual awakening or a psychic change that will adjust the way you perceive the world around you. You'll get comfortable enough inside that maybe you'll never ever drink again. I'd be happy to sit here and talk to you about what you think your problems are so that you will not share about them in the meetings. He said, the meetings are for recovery from alcoholism, not about how your day went. And I immediately informed him that down at the Alano Club, they were breaking that rule right and left. You know, should we go tell them? You know? And he said, no, he says, AA is a safe place. You can come here and do anything you want. You can pretty much do anything you want. He said, I'm just describing to you my Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank God I got somebody that hasn't bought into this strange proposition that we don't express opinions or give advice. I don't know where that ever came from. If we didn't do those two things, we wouldn't have a damn thing to say to each other. You know, and I'm a newcomer in AA. I need some good advice. I need a man to sit across the table from me and tell me how to behave because I just don't know. I don't know how to behave. 3 or 4 months sober, my wife comes home and she says, you know, I'd like you to stay home on Tuesday nights and watch the children so I can go to an Al-Anon meeting. I couldn't believe she even asked me that. I looked right at her and I said, I don't babysit. And I walked out of the house and I felt perfectly justified in that. And then I made a mistake. I told my sponsor. And he rarely yelled at me. He's not a yeller. But on this particular occasion, he said, it's not babysitting, they're your children. This was news to me. I'd never looked at it from that perspective, you know? Because I can have kids and stuff, but I really don't want to do anything with them, you know? I mean, they're more self-centered than me. It's competition. You know, I mean, they don't talk right and stuff. You got to teach them everything. They just don't hang. You know, you got to. It's a pain in the ass. Guys come to me today and go, "Well, I love my children." I go, "Do you really?" You know. Yeah. So he says, "You go home and you tell that woman that you'd be happy to watch your children while she tries to find recovery in the Al-Anon family groups." So I went home and I said, "I'd be happy to." You know. So the first night, you know, the little boy, he's like less than a year old, he just passed out. I don't know what I thought he was going to do, but And the little girl wanted to watch TV or play a game, and we did that. Then the next week, she didn't want to watch TV. She wanted to play ball, play catch, and, you know, time went on. Weeks went by. Months went by. My wife comes home one night, and she says, well, I'm not going to my Al-Anon meeting. I said, well, somewhere. This is my night with the kids. Isn't that how it works? I mean, the absolute worst thing you can say to somebody in AA when they come in here is take what you can use and leave the rest. That'll hurt people. Because you're going to allow me with this finely tuned instrument that I bring to you to determine what's good for me? When have I ever shown a propensity towards making good value judgments in the past? Where is the evidence to this effect? And now you've taken away my medication, and I'm a little jerky. You know, I'm the one that walks in the room, and if you're looking at me, is what the hell are you looking at? And if you don't look at me, I'm heartbroken. There's nothing in between. My sponsor used to say to me, he goes, oh, did I hurt your feeling? Because there's only one. There's not like levels of emotional depth here, you know. So each week I went to this man's house and we read the book together. And we worked the steps out of the book. He was 6 years sober. And I did an inventory, and I did a fifth step, and I made a list of amends. And I remember at that time there was a bunch of people that were taking meetings to Russia. And I got on the list, the mailing list for the newsletter, and I went to him. I go, I'm going to carry the message to Russia. And he looked at me and laughed, and he says, why don't you go to Oregon and make your amends? Well, I've never been to Russia. But I've been to Oregon a few times, and I made my amends over time. And so here's what I think's going on for whatever it's worth. The first step says that we're powerless over alcohol. They took it easy on us, and they just said that we were powerless over alcohol. I think they left it at that so that we wouldn't run screaming down the street. In my experience, I think I am absolutely, totally, completely without power over anything whatsoever. I have no control, no power over anything, including the direction of my life. I'm not of the school that believes that now that I'm sober, I've been re-empowered and given the power of choice whether I drink or not. I understand that, I get it, and I repeated it for a long time. It's just not my experience. It's not my understanding today. I think I'm utterly powerless. I look out in nature, I don't see anything else that has any power either. I think we just do what we do. The next indicated thing is always obvious. The universe, by its very nature, is a giving entity. We just take exception to what it's giving. We think it should be something different than it is, and we suffer because of that. Because we believe we can adjust the world around us to match our perception of reality, and then we'll be happy. And evidently, my happiness depends upon your behavior, because I spend an inordinate amount of time trying to adjust you so that we can both be a little bit happier. You know, I'm not capable of accepting you the way that you are. I can't do it. You're unacceptable to me. And yet I can't live without you. You know, it's called suffering, you know. And we make judgments, don't we? We look out in the world and we go, well, that thing that happened was good, and that thing was bad. Morality, right and wrong, doesn't exist in nature. Stuff just is. And we add the morality. It doesn't exist in and of itself. We create the morality, and we make value judgments based upon our perception of what right and wrong is. We see things that we don't agree with. We don't believe that the lion should eat the lamb. And he continues to eat the lamb. And we have talks with him. He just doesn't understand he should be vegan. Every time there's a lamb, he just eats it. And it's a cute little lamb, blood splattering all over the place, big ugly lion. It just shouldn't be. And we can't change it. So we make up parables. We make up things that someday in the future, we create what's called hope. And we all talk about how wonderful, I have hope. You know, hope is a problem. It's not a solution. Hope is the absolute unacceptance of the way things are now. That there's something wrong with the way things are now. But we create these parables and we say that someday in the future when things are good, because they're horrible now, the lion will lay down with the lamb. If that occurs, I'll bet that lamb will be nervous for eternity. It is the nature of the lion to eat the lamb. There is no morality in it. And we suffer from that. We have difficulty with all of that. We think things are incorrect and shouldn't be. In life there is pain. People die. People leave us. We lose our money. We lose our homes. You know, it's been a rough time for a lot of people. Stuff happens that creates pain in me that I hurt over. And it's part of life. It's a natural thing. The real problem comes when I make the determination that that event should not have occurred, that it was unjust or unfair, or I take it personal when it's not personal. It's just something that's happening. Now I've laid a layer of suffering over the pain of the event that will last much longer than the pain of the event. This is called resentment. And I carry this stuff around me in a big satchel with me wherever I go. The stuff that's happened to me that was unfair and unjust. I'm powerless over all of this. I can't fix any of it, and I suffer. It says that my life became unmanageable. It alludes to the idea that at one time maybe my life was manageable. I don't remember that time. I don't think my life requires management. I think it just unfolds right in front of me like everything else does. If I can grasp this powerlessness just a little bit, just the drugs and alcohol part, it makes the second step operational. I need to align myself with the power. I need to be restored to sanity, certainly enough sanity not to drink and use, but also enough sanity to be able to glimpse the powerlessness. This is the beginning of acceptance. If I can do that, if I can grasp that just a little bit, the third step then becomes operational. Now, the third step's interesting because it tells us that we're going to turn our life and will over to what already has it anyway. It was nice of them to lead us to believe that there's something we could actually do here, you know. But isn't that the classic alcoholic position? There's the universe and me. That's impossible. I can't possibly be separate from the rest of nature. Yet I feel that way, don't we? We feel like that. We feel separate from all of this. And the alcoholic, well, I've been withholding myself from the totality of all things long enough. I'm going to acquiesce now and allow you to take me. Thank you very much. You know, where's my trophy? Guys come to me today and I say, well, you ready to do the third step? They go, no. I go, why not? He goes, well, I have a problem with God. I look right at him, I go, so do I, let's pray. And some of them will say to you, well, I don't even believe in God. And I look right at him, I go, nobody really does, let's pray. You know? Because I'm here to report to you, my opinion about God is absolutely, completely without any relevance whatsoever. So therefore, so's yours. And it says here in the lame book manual, pray. And it seems to be working. You know? So I'm not going to have a theological discussion with you, you know? Well, I might. It is a great topic, after all. What life and will is it talking about? The fourth step, the resentments, fears, and broken relationships. The end result of living a life with seeming power. The fifth step is the physical and literal turning it over. We write it down and we sit with somebody. We tell ourselves and this other human being and the manager, here's my stuff, I'm pooped, you take it. You know, we actually identify it. You write it down. What am I going to turn over? Here. Resentment's because you absolutely insist upon living your own life and it pisses me off at my core. Fear because I have no plan B and this isn't working. So I hate you and I'm afraid of you at the same time. Broken relationships or the sex list. What other kind of relationships could I possibly have other than dramatic and traumatic if what I'm bringing to the table is resentment and fear? You know, of course that's what it's like. 6 and 7 are 2 paragraphs in the book. There's absolutely nothing to do, and we'll be doing that nothing for the rest of our lives. You can see what the character defects are. They're in the 4th column of the inventory. It doesn't say what was my part. It says what were my faults and mistakes. Even if you were molested as a child, if you're 40 years old and you're still hanging on to that resentment, at the bare minimum, you're unforgiving. And it's about your freedom. It's not about agreeing with the perpetrator. It's not making a judgment on what occurred. It's about freeing ourselves of this scarring that is blocking us from the sunlight of the Spirit, from having healthy, deep, profound emotional relationships. Forgiveness is much more of an art than a science. 8 and 9, he gives us our first job. He goes, go make amends. I'm going to help you rid yourself of the resentments. The mechanism for ridding ourselves of resentments, she has trouble with that phrase. Shut up. Is the 9th step. We make amends. That's what rids us of the resentments. Most people don't do this. In my experience, most people don't do this. They don't really do this. And they suffer because of it. Life stops evolving, or maybe they stop evolving. All of us have treaded water around that step. It took me 10 years to do one, the one that I wasn't going to do. The freedom from finally doing that was like stunning. And it was like, why did I wait so long? Because I'm afraid, that's why. 10, 11, and 12, people say, are the maintenance steps. Maintain what? What do we have to maintain at the end of the 9th step? 1 through 9 is about 15, maybe only 10% of the program. It's Sober 101. It's the bare minimum. It's what we have to do to develop a message that has depth and weight so that we can do the real work that needs to be done around here. But we agonize over it, don't we? We do workshops and seminars and manuals and 15-column expanded versions of the inventory. And, it's just another form of self-obsession to me. Have I done more than one inventory? Well, of course I have. Well, you only do one. Good luck, dude. Because stuff changes. Stuff changes. And I've done many 4th and 5th steps. But 1 through 9 is just Sober 101. 10, 11, and 12 is where we live. 10 is the continuing inventory process. If what happened to me in March of 1985 is I was awakened, which I believe is what happened to us, we woke up. Just waking up doesn't mean anything really changes. The rest of the journey is to take that awakening and have it evolve into some kind of an awareness where I'm aware that I'm awake. And maybe there's something I can do with this. Maybe there's a reason why I'm here. Maybe it's not just about me getting to be a better person or getting a better job. I think all that stuff happens around here, but maybe there's more going on. And 10 is about self-awareness, not self-obsession, self-awareness, being able to watch myself move through life. Keeping track of it. How you doing, Bill? How you doing, man? How you doing? The 11th step is about sucking up to the manager. It would behoove us to try to get close to whatever it is that saved our lives, because I don't know about you, but something touched me. Something touched me. I did not make a conscious decision to get sober. I am not sober for 28 years because I work such a righteous program. I used to think that, though. I used to think that. I thought my behavior would tell you that's why I'm sober, and I would sit and tell you how to do it correctly so that you could be wonderful like me. For the first 10 years of my sobriety, I was rapidly working hard on making a name for myself in an anonymous organization. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but it's very weird, and it's lonely, you know. And then I crashed and burned. You got a big ego? Don't walk around here and say, well, the longer I'm sober, the less I know. False humility couched in spiritual pride. I'm not impressed. I've been here 28 years. I know a lot of shit that I didn't know when I walked in here, boy, I'll tell you. And I've got it all ready just for you, you know. You come up and ask me help, you better get out of the way, because here it comes, you know. You're going to get some great advice. And nobody ever takes it, so it's free, you know. You got a big ego, let it hang out there. Give God a big target, you know, because you're going down, you know. If you don't run away, you're going down, you know. Hopefully you'll survive it. I did, but it wasn't pretty, you know. The 11th step talks about meditation and prayer, but in meditation, you can watch your thoughts. You can breathe deeply, get some oxygen to the brain, and then stop and just breathe and focus on your breath. And when the mind wanders, which it does because that's what it does, you can catch it and gently bring it back to the breath. Now, who's doing the catching? Good question, huh? One thing's for absolute sure, because you just had a real life experience. Because spirituality in Alcoholics Anonymous, God or the totality or whatever you want to call it, is an experience. It's not an intellectual concept. And here in AA, we experience it. It happens to us. People's lives are saved here every day. And the mechanism that's used for that is us. We're the ones that say the words. We're the ones that drive them to the meeting. We start the meetings. We set the room up. We read the book with them. We are used in that process. We are the link in the chain. That's an experience. It's not a thought. It's an experience. And if we don't get involved in that process, we never have the experience. One thing's for sure, when you watch your thoughts, you know that who you are is not your thinking mind. That changes the whole game. That changes everything. We can finally stop the self-analysis. We can finally stop seeking ourselves and pay attention to what we're evolving into that we've never ever been before, that has no connection to our past whatsoever. The way we deal with the past in Alcoholics Anonymous is in the present moment. We don't dwell on what once was. That's not who we are. Plus the fact it's just the memory we have of what may have occurred. We're not really sure really what happened, are we? You know? You deal with the past in the present through the behavior that you exhibit now, today. So once you realize that you are not your thinking mind, you can just ignore it. You just ignore it. When it comes up with anxiety, with angst, and with these panic attacks, and with whatever's going on, when it tells you that you can't do it, that don't do it, stay in the house, watch Duck Dynasty, don't go to the meeting, you can ignore it. You don't have to give in to it. You don't have to analyze it. You don't have to write it down. You don't have to share it with every third person that comes by. You can simply ignore it because it doesn't want anything to do with the present moment. There's nothing for it to do. So it makes up stuff to be frightened of in the future or regrets about what happened in the past. The 12th step is why we're here. The 12th step is why we were saved. Should everybody sponsor? Absolutely. There's nothing else to do. Everything else is an activity. Now, the activities are great. CSR, H&I, flipping hamburgers at the Labor Day picnic, working on this wonderful meeting. I love I've done all of that stuff. I continue to do it. I love the fellowship. I love being part of you. I love you. I can't recover without you. I need you. When I get on my knees and pray and ask for help, He sends me you. And I'm telling you, at 66 years old, I am absolutely bored to tears of myself. But you, on the other hand, are a never-ending font of weirdness. It just never stops, Some years ago, there was a new guy in our home group, and he said, "The fog is lifting, and the planes are beginning to land." That's beautiful. Same meeting, another new guy, he says, "I know it's an inside job. I just don't know how to get in there." Where do you get that stuff, man? You can't make that up, So if you open your heart to this work, if you open your heart to it, whatever prejudice you have will walk across the room and ask you for help. I promise you. Whatever prejudice you have, whatever kind of person you can't stand, whatever kind of prejudgment you might have, whatever kind of icky, creepy dude that you don't want anything to do with, he will walk across the room and ask you for help. Now, you have a choice. If you want to hang on to the prejudice, if you want to hang on to the opinion, send it away. And you can find a lot of support for that in AA. We don't work with people on medication. We don't work with drug addicts. We don't, This guy walked across the room and he asked me for help. He said, "Will you sponsor me? I think I should tell you that I'm gay." And I said, "Wouldn't you rather have a gay sponsor?" And he goes, "No." He says, "I don't have a problem being gay, but drinking is an issue." Who knew? I used to stand up here and say that if you were on medication, you weren't sober. I didn't know anything about that, but I don't require any real knowledge to form an opinion. I could just do it on the fly, and I heard a bunch of you say that, and it seemed like a really good right-wing badass opinion to have, and so I started just saying it. So this guy walks across the room, and he says, "Will you sponsor me? I'm bipolar, and I'm on medication." Jeez. So I start working with this guy, and I had the experience of peeling him off the ceiling and lifting him up off the floor. One time, 40-year-old grown man, he came across my living room, he curled up in my lap, put his head in my neck, and cried like a baby at the pain of being alive, at just the pain of his life. And I held him and just rocked him. And Karen walked through the living room and went, "Whoa." I mean, that'll get your attention, Now when I see that guy coming, I go, "Have you taken your medication? You got issues, dude, Now I think all newcomers are bipolar. And the whole medical profession wants to medicate us, and I don't agree with that. There's a lot of stuff I don't agree with. There's a lot of things that I think are incorrect. But so what? So what I think? What difference does it make? I've been raised in Alcoholics Anonymous. I live by 2 rules. Always answer the phone, get rid of caller ID. Have faith that whoever's calling you is supposed to be there. Or there's no mistake. We all talk about having faith. Let go and let God. We have these windy arguments about knowing the difference between my will and God's will. Isn't that the height of arrogance to you? The idea that I could do a battle of wills with the power that drives the entire universe. Like somehow there's some separateness between my will and his or its. I can't buy it. I don't think that there's any difference between my will and God's will. I have levels of awareness. Sometimes I'm aware, sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm paying attention and sometimes I'm not. It just seems to be the way it is. Always answer the phone. Have faith. Rule number 2, never say no. You end up in Texas. You know? Have faith that whatever you're being asked to do is what you're supposed to be doing, that's why it's happening, or it wouldn't be happening. Have faith. Alan Watts said one of the most powerful things I've ever heard in my life. Alan Watts said, faith is not knowing and having that be okay. Now, I always thought what faith was, I have a belief mechanism about what life's all about, maybe what death's all about and what happens afterwards. And I create this construct, and I have faith that this belief mechanism is correct. Watts is saying something much more powerful than that. True faith really is not knowing what's going on, not understanding it, understanding that we're not capable of that, and having trust or faith that it's all just fine, just the way it is right now. There's nothing wrong. Everything's just fine. That's difficult. And I'll leave you with this. Some people say, you got to give it away to keep it. No. You got to give it away to even get it. If you're not giving it away, you don't have it. Thank you.